What's up, horror fans? It's Danny from the Lastercast, and if it's Monday night, I'm sitting here talking to you about Sunday night's episode of The Baby on HBO Max. This has very quickly become my favorite show. I've made no ifs, ands, or buts about that in my reviews of the first 4 episodes. I was really happy last week. I had a bunch of comments on the video with people who seem to be digging this show. So I don't know what the creators, Sean Robbins Grace and Lucy Gamer, I don't know if they're planning on making this a multi-season show or if this is just a one and done, but I'm hoping this show finds its audience because, like I said, very quickly, this show is becoming my favorite thing on to watch on streaming. It's HBO Max, but it's only a 30 to 35. This was the longest episode of the season, and it was 34 minutes, 36 minutes, including the end credits. So if you want just a really fast-moving show that's quirky, scary, and creepy as hell, you should be watching The Baby on HBO Max. So, episode 5. This episode is very appropriately titled The Baby, because this is where we get the origins of the titular character. It was written by Kara Smith and directed by Faraz Shariat, who I believe directed episode 4. And this entire episode is a prequel of, it's basically the Mrs Eaves story. We meet young Mrs Eaves named Noor, and the main character of this episode is Helen, played by Tanya Reynolds, who played a character on Outlander. My wife and I watch Outlander, and my wife is such an Outlander fan. I said, do you remember this character who was in one episode? And my wife was instantly able to tell me who that character was. She was married to Lord John, I believe, if you're an Outlander fan. Young Mrs Eaves was played by Seyan Sarvan, and they are both fantastic. So basically, first of all, this episode starts very appropriately. We see a lot of internal footage throughout this episode, but the opening shot of this episode is the oven opening and Helen pulling out a roast for the family. Very appropriately, woman pulling something out of the oven. And we learn that Helen is very unhappy in her marriage. She's married to a man named Jack, played by Carl Davies. And we learned at this dinner where I believe his brother and his wife are there, and their father, her father just comes out and says that he's dying of cancer and that he's probably got a year left. And so everybody's upset. And that night, Jack basically guilts Helen into sleeping with him. He almost in tears, complaining about how he's sad about his dad and he can't sleep and it will help him sleep. And it's an uncomfortable scene to watch because it's not an outward rape scene, but it's just uncomfortable because it's very obvious to everyone involved and to everyone watching that Helen wants nothing to do with this and that she's just doing it knowing also that this is her last night there. She is planning on running away and meeting her lover, Noor, who is picking her up later that night. And this episode, whereas episode 4 dealt with some really cool folk horror stuff, there was the commune, there was a bonfire, and all of these, there was the big feast scene. This pulls back all the supernatural, and this just goes to real world horror that, especially in a different time. The Baby is set in the modern day, so let's flash back. This has got to be minimum 30 years ago, 25 to 30 years ago, based on what I am perceiving the age differences between the two actresses who play Mrs. Eaves, Amira Ghazala, who plays the older Mrs. Eaves, and Seyan Sarvan. I'm guessing 20, 25 years, something in that area. And you get this just terrible, like the real world horror that somebody is going through who, in the days before being open and being, openly gay or openly a member of the LGBTQ community was allowed. And then you add the really uncomfortable, timely aspects of this, where you effectively have an episode where a woman is not allowed, she is demonized and fired from her job. She's a librarian. She's working to make enough money so that, her and Mrs. Eaves can run off together. Her husband and her husband's family report her to her place of employment. They report her to the police, and she is, she's not allowed at this point to just come out and go, yeah, I don't want to be married to this guy. She's pregnant. I don't want to carry this guy's baby. I don't want to raise this baby. I want to be openly gay with my lover. You didn't have the right to say those things. And you get this really real world horrific situation. And of course, even though the show is based in the UK, the timeliness of this episode coming out, basically a woman who she's taken to the doctor by Mrs. Eaves, and she's going to spend the night at the doctor. The doctors call her family, they call her husband, and she is effectively kidnapped. She is basically kidnapped, and she is held by Jack, her husband, and his brother in this family house where they, force her to stay there, heavily medicated. They're drugging her, and they force her to have the baby, and they basically are trying to force this relationship that isn't there. I keep coming back to the word, but there's only one way to look at this. It's horrific. And the timeliness of this episode, where a woman is basically kidnapped and forced to give birth to a child that she doesn't want, and she's forced into a motherhood that she doesn't want, is, with everything going on with the Supreme Court and the Roe versus Wade decision. I'm not trying to get overtly political, but it's hard to not. It's an obvious connection, and it's something that pulls, from current events, and whether this show was obviously written and filmed months ago. So the fact that this episode came out now makes it even more timely and more, in the current zeitgeist of stuff that's going on. In fact, there's this amazing line in some of the behind the scenes that HBO Max puts up in previous episodes. The women who created this show, some of the writers and directors, they talked about the perception of women and how, it's perceived that the highest possible status that any woman could attain is motherhood. And that if you're a woman that doesn't want that, then you're somehow lacking. So Helen she's kidnapped, she is drugged, she's held against her will, and she's forced to give birth to this baby. And then they basically are throwing the baby at her and being like, here, love it. And she doesn't want it. She doesn't love it. She wants nothing to do with it. She refuses to feed the baby. She refuses to breastfeed. And the woman who they have looking after her, this woman, Judy, she puts the baby on top of her, and the baby smiles and coos a little bit. And Helen basically just says, get it off of me. And the line that resonated with me, based on the commentary that the creators, the writers, directors, and the creators said, Judy's line is, you're a monster. as if to say, you, woman who was kidnapped, drugged, held against your will, and forced to give birth to a baby that you were impregnated with from a husband that you hated and were trying to run away from, you're the monster because you don't want to love this child. Whereas it's very obvious, at least I would hope, that the monsters in this situation are her family, the ones who are kidnapping her and holding her against her will. And again, with everything going on in the Supreme Court and with all these new laws in different states about, criminalizing women who seek abortions and criminalizing doctors who perform abortions, this episode could not have come out at a better time to get discussed. And I love that I got a bunch of comments on the last episode. I love that I'm seeing this show picking up some traction on social media, on Twitter. Would love to hear more, especially from women who watch the show, like what you think about this, because it's kind of hard for me as a white American guy to just come out and say these things. I without it just seeming off. So I'd love to hear in the comments from women who've watched this show what you thought about the themes of this episode and some of the stuff that's in there. Helen, who is called a monster, she tries everything. She lies to Judy about it being her sister's birthday, and she makes a phone call secretly to Noor, basically telling her, I'm gonna get out of here. And Judy tries to, she figures it out right away. She calls back the number, realizes who's on the other line, and basically, knowing that she's never going to escape this situation, Helen does the only thing that she can at that point, and she stabs Judy in the neck, killing her. And then Jack, who had left to go to his father's funeral, walks back upstairs, having forgotten his eulogy, and she shoves him back, and he falls down the stairs, hits his head, and he dies. So now she's murdered 2 people. She leaves the baby behind. Of course, when she finally gets to the cabin with Mrs. Eaves, the baby is there. And Helen walks out, and we don't see where she goes. We do see a shot of her under the water. Like, to me, it seems like they're saying that she drowned herself. She committed suicide somehow. And Mrs. Eaves is left wondering where the baby went. And the whole point of this episode is, here we are. We fast forward back to the present. Mrs. Eaves has this vendetta against this little baby. Why does this woman, this older woman, want to kill this baby and prevent it from being taken care of? And we find out that baby is effectively the thing that ruined her lover's life, ended her lover's life, led to the end of their relationship, and basically is the reason for all of her pain. And it asks us as the viewer to wonder, is it the baby? Is there some evil that the baby has because of the way it was created, because of this forced, not forced union, but a forced, Jack, the husband, effectively forcing himself onto Helen, and then all of the forcing of her to, give birth to the baby and to attempt to raise the baby. Is all of that what caused the evil? The preview for next week is back in the present time, and we find out that the baby was taken by Barbara, Natasha and Bobby's mother, and the commune is now, in control of the baby. And Natasha's trying to get the baby back from her mother. And we see all just like 30 seconds in the preview of glimpses of what look like certain members of the commune are sitting there holding the baby out, almost like it's oh God, I can't think of the word. When you put something on the altar, like they're holding it out like it's almost like it's something to be prayed to on an altar. And then there's another shot of a bunch of bodies laying, and they could be sleeping because it's a commune, but they also could be dead. Maybe there was some kind of Jonestown thing here at this commune that the baby caused. But we know now why Mrs. Eaves hates the baby. And we know why she is trying to get Natasha to destroy the baby. I think we're going to get a lot more clues as to what exactly the baby is next week. What powers the baby might have. And I think we're going to go back to that kind of folk horror element of the commune and everything that's going on there. So, yeah, this show, whether it is dealing with supernatural, whether it's dealing with folk horror, whether it's dealing with real-world topical issues and real-life horrific situations, this show continues to be one of, if not my favorite, new show on TV. Next week, episode 6, it goes up Sunday night on HBO Max. I do my reviews on Monday, so let me know in the comments what you thought. You could watch all of my reviews for episodes 1 through 4 on the channel now. Pete and I are sitting down with author Brian Asman later, and that interview will be up later this week. And Charlotte and I did a Friday the 13th franchise ranking, which is up on the channel. With Friday the 13th was 2 weeks ago. So yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff, and we're going to be doing a lot more reviews coming up. So this has been Danny from the Lacercast. Make sure you're watching The Baby on HBO Max, and I'll talk to you very soon.